Hi, my name is Elias Clarkson, and my presentation and essay was on the psychological impact of military service, or basically, how does serving in the military affect mental health? Service in the armed forces significantly affects the mental health of veterans and troops due to a variety of factors, including potential for physical injuries with severe psychological effects, stigma associated with seeking professional mental help, and heightened risk of mental illness and trauma disorders as a result of combat. So, what I'm going to be focusing on is how physical wounds impact mental health, especially traumatic brain injuries, also known as TBIs. These are one of the most common injuries suffered by troops, and they're typically caused by explosions, such as artillery or IEDs, improvised explosive devices. They can also be caused by vehicle crashes and rollovers, or by falls, or by gunfire. One study by Justin E. Kohler and a team of researchers found that up to 1 in 4 U.S. veterans displayed symptoms of TBIs and screened positive, which is a very high number. A separate study by Lisa A. Brenner and a team of researchers found that troops with TBIs were significantly more likely to develop certain disorders and to commit suicide. Out of a sample size of over 860,000 U.S. Army soldiers, over 100,000 had a recorded TBI in their medical record. And they found a 68% increase in mood disorders, a 32% increase in alcohol use disorders, and a 100% increase in substance use disorders. They also found that troops with TBIs generally had about a 21% faster time to commit suicide, and they were more likely to do so, which basically means out of troops with versus without TBIs who did die by suicide, troops with TBIs did it 21% faster. Another fairly common injury within the military is amputations. And this happens when a troop is wounded badly in the limb and doctors have to remove the limb in order to, because it just can't be salvaged and because keeping the wounded limb could cause worse damage. Of course, because this is such a major complication in surgery, it can really badly affect the mental health of amputees. Researchers at the University of Toronto studied lots of different studies regarding amputees, and they found that veterans had an increased risk of PTSD, depression, anxiety, and substance abuse and suicide. People with amputations often experience something called phantom pains, which is basically when you feel a sensation of pain in a limb that you no longer have. This is a mental issue, and it can be really bad for mental health because, one, it's chronic pain, which if you have constant pain, especially pain that you can't really deal with, that's going to really bother you. It's going to cause a lot of symptoms. Amputees also often have discomfort or pain from their prosthetics. So if they have a fake leg or an arm or whatever it is, that can rub against your skin. It can be really uncomfortable. It can be painful, and that can worsen mental health outcomes. The researchers also noted that failed attempts to salvage limbs had significantly worse outcomes. So basically, if the doctors or the medics tried to, instead of just amputating straight away, if they tried to keep the leg or the arm alive instead of amputating, and they failed, that would lead to much worse outcomes. So that doesn't necessarily mean it's better to just amputate straight away, because sometimes it is possible to save the limb, but sometimes if they fail, that can be really bad for the soldier and for the troops. Overall, service in the military adversely affects mental health of many troops. You can see that 22% of veterans suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder or major depression, and 34% suffer from other mental concerns. And only 1 in 3 of those actually seek help because of severe stigma in the military. That stigma can either be from within. Maybe troops have some kind of stigma that they developed from their family or their childhood. Maybe they had a bad experience with mental health treatment, or they're afraid that family or their friends would judge them for being weak. It can also be from external factors. They might be worried that leadership or their officers could judge them or treat them differently. They could be worried that they won't receive a promotion, they won't receive a top secret clearance, or they will be deemed unfit to deploy. So all of that, troops with higher stigma tend to have much worse mental health outcomes. So overall, sustaining injuries can increase chances of psychological disorders, but even troops without physical wounds face increased risks. When you look at soldiers versus the general populace who haven't been in the military, they have increased risks of basically all kinds of trauma disorders, from PTSD, depression, anxiety, substance use, and suicide.